From the stars to our earth, were ancient gods and pharaohs, were they from the stars? Were they extraterrestrials, which I kind of prefer to call non-human intelligences? So are they a part of maybe factual, historical, that they actually existed? Or are they more of a symbolic metaphor that is just part of folklore stories? Or are they part of our ancient memories? Are you tapping into the ancient memories of your ancestors that may have existed hundreds of thousands of years ago? So I'm not sure that we're going to answer all of those questions today, but piquing your curiosity is very uplifting to your spirit. Your spirit loves to explore. So I am doing a little mini series of 7 episodes. This is episode 2. So let's dive in. We're going to do quite a few layers and just let yourself be curious. But I do want to acknowledge for those who have written me and said we need to be really careful, that we aren't kind of programmed by this information. And so I am going to say, I agree. We really need to have a sense about us. That's why I teach intuitive psychic development, so you can get your own information. So all we're doing today is we're just enjoying a conversation, a curiosity, and let's think about this. So across the world, ancient civilizations, which I love that topic, ancient civilizations, tell remarkably similar stories where the gods descended from the sky, sharing advanced knowledge and maybe even altering the course of humanity. Could these be accounts of extraterrestrial visitors, perhaps the Sirian star system, or the Dogon tribe about the mysterious Nommo beings, the celestial gods of Egypt, or the Anunnaki of Sumeria, who may hold the key to unlocking our star origins? So let's go ahead. I've got my notes here. There's no way I'm going to be able to just talk off the top of my head about this. But yeah, let's dive in. It's a subject that recently I've been finding very fascinating. Have you? So, key civilizations and our connections to the star visitors. There is a man by the name of William Henry. You may be familiar with him through Ancient Aliens. He is a art historian, and one of his biggest focuses about the ancient art that might show spacecraft in the sky in those scenes. And you can Google it if you want to look it up through either William Henry or just asking about spacecraft in ancient artwork. And so you may find that really fascinating. So the mythology is that the Egyptian gods of Ra, Thoth, Osiris were often depicted as coming from the heavens, discussing the belief of the pharaohs to gain that deeper knowledge. Were they divine descendants of sky gods? And there are some things that I've read about that where they actually lived like 20, 30,000 years in their lifetime. On average, humans live about 80 years. And so, this is definitely written in the history. How could that possibly be true? And I've talked a lot about the pyramids. There's so much information about the pyramids, but the pyramids have astronomical alignments with particularly Orion's belt, and their advanced engineering is so precise that it raises questions about any potential external influences. So I don't know about you, but whenever I thought about the pyramids, it's like you're trying to think, how did they move these big stones that would weigh tons? They could possibly roll them there over tree trunks, but how do they get them all the way to the top? And so then they're saying, well, maybe possibly they were levitated there. And levitation is one of those things that is being promised to us over the next several years, maybe in the next 10 to 20 years. So who knows? Maybe it's true. So there's a lot of theories suggesting that the gods were extraterrestrial visitors with advanced knowledge in construction of the pyramids. Then there's the Dogon tribe. I've been very, very curious about the Dogon tribe and also the Sirian mysteries. So you have the Orion's belt, but then you have the planets Sirius A, Sirius B, which are known as the dog stars, which I thought was interesting because the tribe in Mali, let me see, it's in the African continent. But what I found interesting was that they are called the Dogon tribe, yes, of Mali, and they are have detailed knowledge of the Sirian star system, especially about Sirius B. This was the big thing that really hit the news. I think it was in the 1970s, where they found this very sacred cave of the Dogon tribe, and painted on the cave was the Orion's belt, but there was also the Sirian system, and Sirius B was even painted on the caves. The cave paintings were supposed to be 700 years old. And when astronomers were looking at this and scientists, they were like, well, we just discovered that there was an extra star, Sirius B, only 20 years ago. So it's like, how did they know this 700 years ago? So I've always been very curious about the Dogon. And the Dogon also talk a lot about DNA and higher levels of DNA. So Dogon is spelled Dogon. You're very welcome to look them up and do your own research. But how could it be possible for this very small, very remote tribe have any of this knowledge? And of course, their answer to it is our ancestors told us. Sumerians and the Anunnaki, in their ancient text, they share key details of the Sumerian tablets and their accounts of the Anunnaki, the beings who came from the sky that played a role in humanity. Now, it's interesting that the Sumerians also had very high levels of advanced knowledge, astronomy, time, mathematics. They were very much ahead of their era. They also had a written system. And the theory is that the Anunnaki were also extraterrestrial beings who visited Earth and influenced human development. So I say it that way when influence human development, because you can read things about them that is much more sounds like they had a cool relationship. And then there's the other side where they say it wasn't such a great relationship, that they influenced the DNA of humans to get them to go and become miners, to mine gold and do all kinds of the kind of heavy lifting. So maybe not so kind. So that's why I say it influences humanity. You get to determine which side of the fence that you are standing on. But remember, please always reserve your opinions and your theories and your thoughts, because this is all about just opening your mind, expanding your mind, adding that neuroplasticity to your brain. Remember, I'm a nurse, so it's all about developing new neurons as you explore and become curious about these topics. You don't have to decide what you believe or what you don't believe. In the Mayan and Hopi accounts of cosmic visitors, in the Mayan civilization, they highlight their advanced astronomical calendars, their fascination with celestial events, and stories of the sky gods, often depicted as descending from the heavens. And it's interesting, I have to add this morning, I knew I was going to be doing this talk, but this morning when I was doing a meditation, I had a really strong vision of the blue kachina. So I've had a lot of blue light beings come in, but the blue kachina came in really strongly today. I will be sharing that message in another video. So they've had the Hopi prophecy, oral traditions, star beings who've often visited their ancestors, offering guidance and warning of future events. And the Hopi also emphasize similarities between the accounts of other places in the world, civilizations that share the same message, the same prophecies. So in this advanced astronomical knowledge, it's really important for us to focus on how these civilizations had precise knowledge of celestial phenomena long before even the invention of telescopes. And let me ask you again, is this symbology or is this reality? Are the accounts based on real interactions or are they just stories? So I wanted to do a little deeper dive about, let me just make sure. All right. Sorry about that. I was really curious about the Dogon tribe. So I already talked about that, about the cave paintings in the cave. The Egyptians were, and so the Dogons were very associated with Orion's belt as well as planets Sirius A, Sirius B. The Egyptians were also very much aligned with Orion's belt and also had strong connections from the planet Sirius. The Sumerians speculated that they came from the Pleiades, and so it's a whole different influence than Orion's belt and the Sirians. But there are many celestial regions that interpret these texts. So again, there's a lot of information you can do a deep dive on. The Mayan align many of their structures and celestial bodies with Venus and the sun. And so different cultures around the world may have had different connections with different star systems, but what they had similar was that they really lived according to the stars and the rotations of the planets. And the Hopi speak of the star being the blue star or blue kachina, which are often interpreted references from also the planet Sirius. Now, when I first had the blue light beings come visit me, I didn't know where they were from. And it can be really confusing because the Syrians have always told me, as well as some of the other types of star beings, which I will talk about in another episode of the series, is that the blue isn't specific to one type of star being, that there's a lot of different star beings that like to work with the frequency of blue. And so it was really confusing in the beginning. It's actually taken me a few years to really hone down that who I've been communicating with are the Syrians. So what's this possible connection between all these star systems? Do these ancient civilizations work together? Do they work separate from each other? Could it be these ancient civilizations are contacted by different groups from different star systems? Do they ever reference that maybe there's just one single point of higher wisdom and knowledge, like we think of as God, as having one God that oversees all these other, we'll call them ascended masters if we don't want to call multiple levels of God. And is it possible that they are all connected? And how did they gain such precise astronomical knowledge? Like, did their understanding of the stars of Sirius B that was impossible to see with the naked eye, did that knowledge come from advanced beings? The Dogons, the Egyptian gods, Sumerian Anunnaki, interpret the same phenomena, and they end up, based in these kind of whatever we might call them, the folklore stories, their history is very similar. They've got very kind of creation theories that are very, very similar, even though these cultures are very old. So I wanted to talk about like some of the questions that I have for you to speculate on. So if you could frame this mystery in an open-ended exploration, could these stories be fragments of a shared global memory of contact with beings from the stars? What do you think? Now, I've been talking about our DNA being activated, that we've had DNA that's been lying dormant, that we're going to be able to understand higher levels of consciousness, higher levels of DNA. Do you think that's possible? And these are the things I really think in this conscious expansion we are being asked to explore. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Nomos. So the Nomos are in the Dogon oral tradition in the way that they describe. So they said that the Nomos, so it's Nommo, came from the planet Sirius. So I don't know if it was Sirius A or Sirius B. And they came to the earth in the form of water beings. So they were beings that needed water to survive. And they came down as fish, possibly dolphins or whales or mermaids. But the mysteries of the Dogon tribe, when they were talking about the aquatic star beings that came into the waters here on Earth, this was long before we had our Mermaid series. Mermaid series. That'd be a good series to talk about. But it's older than the folklore stories that talk about mermaids. So according to the Dogon oral tradition, the Nommo were amphibious beings who came from Sirius star system, part fish, part aquatic in nature, but they could also go on land. According to their history, they could go on land for a while and then they would have to come back to the waters. And the Nommo were said to be highly intelligent, extremely consciousness in their spiritual abilities, bringing knowledge, astronomy, agriculture, and even moral codes for living. So is it possible that the Nommo are truly connected to dolphins and whales? Well, the Nommo invites comparisons to dolphins and whales, which are often associated with highly intelligent communication and spiritual significance across cultures. So I was in Hawaii and I was swimming and I was a little nervous, a little afraid of the water. I hadn't swam in big water like that in a long time, but I got this snorkel. I had done that before, and I would have like this little boogie board that I would kind of have strapped to, I think, my ankle while I was swimming. And so I would just kind of stay on the surface and swim. And I was with Yvonne, and there was this particular day, it was off the Big Island. There's a place there, it's called Two Steps. So like the waves will kind of come in, but it's lava rock and you have to sit down and then you go down on the next step and then you kind of dive into the water. And I would say maybe it's 15, 20 feet deep. So the water was really murky. I couldn't see a thing. So mostly I was just focusing on, can I see Yvonne? Or can I see, I don't want to lose sight. Always I could look up out of the water and know where I was, right? But I had my face in the water and I'm swimming, can't see a thing, can't see the bottom, can't see stones, can't see anything. And suddenly my heart chakra flew open, super expanded. It was almost like a spinning wheel where you can hear it go, woo, like it just took off. And I was so flooded with love. I was just flooded. It took over my whole being. I didn't even have time to think, what is happening? It was so much love. And the next moment, out of the murky water from sand stirred up, I was nose to nose with a dolphin. Now, that blew my mind. And the reason why it blew my mind was because, if we say these dolphins are very high intelligence, they have a lot of love. If you're looking at one, it just makes you want to smile. But I wasn't looking at one. I actually felt it. I experienced it before it was nose to nose with me. And so I do believe that whales and dolphins are very, very high intelligent beings. Do they actually come from another planet? Is that where their ancestral origins are from? Why are some of you so attracted to the waters? Do you have star being qualities, Sirian qualities, where you used to be very aquatic and you have to live near the water? And it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be an ocean. It can be, a lake or a pond, any kind of water, river, or creeks. So, yeah. So very, very curious, isn't it? So is it possible that the legend of Nommo represents humanity's ancient connections to these marine creatures? So as I said, the mermaids have been found all around the world, but I have a mermaid story for you. And so this was probably 10 years later. I'm visiting the Big Island again. And by this time, I'm a little bit more of a confident swimmer. And but I still have my boogie board. And there's this place, it's called Kealakekua Bay. So it's quite a large bay, and it's near the Captain Cook Monument off the Big Island. And so what I did was, I said to Yvonne, I'd like to swim all the way over to that big wall across the way and swim back. Like I was just in the mood for having a really good long swim. And I don't know how far it was. It could have been a couple of miles. So anyway, we get in the water, we take off, we're having a nice swim, and my head's down, and suddenly I'm seeing these beings in the water, just a couple of them in the water, but it was almost like I could see through them. So I could see, it was kind of like a mirage. Like you could see movement in the water, but it was like I could also see through and see the water. And I got up out of the water and I said to Yvonne, I'm seeing some really interesting beings. They look like they're spiritual beings. And she said, well, do you want to go back? Are you afraid? Are you nervous? And I said, no, I feel fine. So I ended up going ahead and swimming across the water. And they became more and more and more. And before I knew it, there were thousands of these beings. And then I started getting like a little claustrophobic. It felt a bit much. So at one point I finally said to Yvonne, I think I better go back. I don't know what this is. But I will tell you, later on, I started asking people, and they said they had no idea what I was talking about when I would ask some of the locals that live there. So they pointed me in the right direction of a woman. Her name was Auntie Aka. She is no longer living now, but they told me where to drive, where I could find her. And the moment I found her, I said, can I share this story with you? Anyway, she told me, oh, you've met the Hawaiian name. You would know them in your language as the mermaids. We have mermaids that protect that area. That's where our kings are buried. So I've had more experiences with mermaids, but that was the very first significant experience I had. So when I'm talking about this series, the one thread that goes along is consciousness. And so Is it scientific? Is it mythical? But the consciousness is the thread that's going to keep us connected through it all. That you can read a lot out there, you can read science, you can read people's opinions, but when you tune in on the inside, what's your intuitive knowing sense tell you about it? So that are my questions for today. And my story. So thank you all so much for popping on. Please post in the comments section if you have any of your own experiences, your own stories. Do you remember being a mermaid? Do you remember being from the stars? Do you remember having a connection with the waters? Do you see hieroglyphics? We've just been talking about light codes and all kinds of stuff. So I will stop here, but I look forward to seeing you on the next segment. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.